Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So this is Consortium, Part 2, Poe, Chapter 41, Carol. Damn, I need to get me one of these suits, I exclaimed as I watched Poe run the gym track in their modified pressure suit in record time. When they had mentioned the suit while we were talking, I asked if I could see it in action. Loki, is it possible to make me something like that before we go over to the seed ship? Yes, Carol. I will ask Frida for the specifications. Poe stopped in front of me, barely winded. So? Record time, kid. I got so jealous I asked Loki to make me something like it. He says he can have it ready before we go tomorrow. Poe got a complicated look on their face. I wasn't expecting to use it again, but it is an amazing tool. It really helped in the first days when the vines came. They had a faraway look, and after a moment I realized they weren't really present. Hey, Poe? They blinked. Oh, sorry. That happens sometimes. PTSD, I get it. We don't have folks with anything like you went through, but we've had accidents on station, and the folks involved in those accidents have the same look. Same with anyone who survives assault and abuse, which I've seen too. You've had all of it, so yeah, it makes sense. We even had classes about PTSD at the academy. We do our best, but a lot of it's just getting through and finding ways to deal with it. That's what Marcia said, too. Jack told me she was a psychologist as well as a chaplain. Apparently no one in the Unity military ever does just one job. I was impressed. That's practical. A lot of work for folks, but practical. I looked over their suit. So, what's fighting like in that thing? It's not difficult to fight in, even when it's in enhanced mode. Frida took control of it for me a few times, but then I learned how to control it myself. She made another suit for me to train against, and I got to a point where I could kick the training suit across the room and against the wall. I can't do that just on my own, though. Jack can. With his enhancements? I'm guessing you'll be more like him, huh? I don't know. We'll have to see when Loki finishes printing it. You'll have more control over your suit than Poe does, Carol, because of the enhancements. For example, you won't have to use verbal commands. I smiled widely, rubbing my hands together. Oh, yes, I cackled. Poe looked a little confused. I get the advantage, but not just that. I'm just thinking that my other siblings in arms are going to be so jealous about the suit. For some reason, Ares hadn't really thought of pressure suits as armor, but maybe Frida should send him the specs. I don't think any of them will want enhancements, but a suit like yours would do just fine for them. Poe grinned. Yeah, I could see the other soldiers drooling over something like this. They blinked and looked at something on the helmet's display. Hey, we should probably get you a shake or something. As soon as they said it, my stomach rumbled. Yep, my stomach agrees. Suit off, Poe said. The suit cracked open like an egg, and they stepped out of it. It put itself back together, then walked itself over to the wall of the gym. That is so cool, I said. I giggled. Oh, I can't wait for my own fuck you suit. Poe looked at me with an eyebrow raised. Fuck you suit? Yeah. I mimed punching someone. Fuck you, bad guy. Then I kicked. And fuck you too, other bad guy. Roar! I laughed. Come on. The kind of power in that thing, you can't just call it anything else. Adults are weird, Poe said, laughing. That's all too true, Poe. And I'm even weirder because I'm a Marine. Come on, let's get lunch. After lunch with Poe, I joined the Admiral for our pre-mission brief. The Admiral looked up as I entered the conference room. Can we have privacy, please, Loki? Yes, Admiral, Loki said. I blinked to close my own connection to Loki and sat down. How's the adjustment going? So far, so good, even with having to eat just about every hour. It's kind of a novelty at the moment, but I think it'll be a bit old soon. The Admiral chuckled. That's what Admiral Merrick said after the first week. I think he had fried chicken every day for 2 weeks when he got his enhancements, then couldn't touch it for a year. I totally get that, sir. I see you spent a lot of time with Poe since yesterday. What do you think of her? Them, sir. Sorry, yes. What do you think of them? They're young, sir, but they've been through more than enough for 2 lifetimes. They've witnessed some pretty brutal things and managed to come out relatively okay, from what I can see. They do have signs of PTSD, but it appears to be managed right now. They studied Old Earth Buddhism and many forms of martial arts with Frida because they didn't have anything else to do until Loki came back with Marcia and Jack. They could probably kick my ass easily, even without their super suit. They're smart, too. Not sure about the whole spiritual thing they've got going on, but that's never been my thing. You're gonna have to learn more about that, Decker. That's the whole premise for their communication with these aliens. I asked Loki for the most recent information on these beings. Apparently, Carver's humans were all directly killed by the aliens. Like Alpha, Frida's humans all went mad and killed each other. Frida was lucky that she didn't have folks on her station that knew how to build bombs. We're also really lucky that Marcia was able to stop that ship that came to Ares. Can you imagine our folks going mad like that? I shuddered. Thing is, sir, I can imagine, and it would have been no... I shuddered. Thing is, sir, I can imagine, and it wouldn't have been good. No, it wouldn't. He paused, looking thoughtful for a moment. I need you to assess while you're over there if they're going mad or not. All we have is their word and the word of a dead woman, that they can communicate with these aliens. We need to know if these elders will attack us again. You don't trust Loki's word, sir? The Admiral sat back in his chair, staring at me, but didn't answer the question. All he said was, Ares is unsure of his father's actions. Why didn't he say anything before we left? He did. Ares had Merrick come to my office before you got there. Ares wants to believe his father about what Marcia told him, but is unsure of Jack's influence in all this. Besides, we don't know anything about these Survey and Unity folks either. What if they want to come and take over the Consortium? That's a bit paranoid, Admiral. It'll take them 6 months to get here, for one thing. Then that's why we need to find out more about Jack and Poe and these aliens. We need to be prepared. Merrick wants to send a full platoon here as soon as he can, to make sure that they don't attack again. And how are they supposed to do that? With all due respect, sir, I think that's jumping the gun. Give Poe a chance, sir. I thought for a moment. I'll start by suggesting to them that they have the aliens take down the vines on Kahlo Station so that humans can live there again. If they can get the elders to do that, we'll know the communication thing is legit. The Admiral nodded. Okay, I'll accept that. I'd rather be overly paranoid than start a war. You and me both. On another front, have you talked with Jack outside of mealtimes? He asked. I shook my head. No, sir. Although, according to Poe, Marcia and Jack were really close. Not lovers, but closer than family. I'm guessing that he's been hit pretty hard by her death. Yes. But you'd think he'd understand that he has a duty. He was a soldier, after all. I did tell Poe I'd go and try and talk to him. Figured that was the same reason the Admiral was bringing it up now. That sounds like a good idea, Decker. Maybe you can add a reminder about his responsibility as Loki's captain. I frowned. I'll try, but I'm not going to badger the man while he's grieving for his partner. Even you got time off when your wife passed to the ancestors, sir. The Admiral stared at me while his face went red, then white. He grunted. Yes, well, do what you can, Decker. I nodded and stood up. Will that be all, sir? He stared at me for a moment, nodded, and said, Dismissed. I left the room, turning on my enhancements as I did so. Oh, where's Jack right now, Loki? I asked in my head. He's in his quarters. Tell him I'm coming over. He said he didn't want to talk to anyone. He's hurting enough already, Carol. So am I. I'll talk to both of you then. I'm not going to hurt him. I just want to get him talking like you did with me the other night. You'll leave if he demands it? If he asks twice, yes. Okay, but you cannot hurt him. I won't allow it. I promise I won't hurt him intentionally, Loki. He might feel hurt depending on what we talk about, though. I understand. Follow the lights, then. The running lights came on in the hallway, and I followed them to Jack's door. I palmed the door, requesting entry. After a moment, it opened onto a small, dimly lit hallway that opened up to a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows, which offered an incredible view of Kahlo Station, the seed ship, and the space around it. It reminded me of the chapel. Wow, I said out loud. There was movement from the large sunken couch in front of the windows. Yeah, everyone says that when they see the windows for the first time, came Jack's voice from the couch. What do you want? What, I can't be a kind person and see how someone who just lost his partner is doing? I asked, as I made my way around the couch and sat down opposite Jack, who was huddled under a blanket. You don't even know me. Why would you care? Because A, you're a fellow soldier, and B, I've come to know Poe pretty well in the last 24 hours, and they're worried about you because you've barely talked to them since your partner died. Not to mention the Admiral's a bit miffed, although I did remind him about when his own wife passed, so... Jack sighed. Ah, you've come to remind me of my duty and some such bullshit. Is it really bullshit when you're Loki's captain and a member of your crew is going to be attempting to talk to aliens tomorrow? Do you really think that Poe would feel good if you weren't on the bridge keeping an eye on things so Loki could bring them back in a hurry? He couldn't do that with Marcia. I eyed him, about to say that he shouldn't blame Loki, but then Loki said, I'm putting a nanopicket jump drive in Carol's suit, so Carol will be able to control it from the inside. I'm not sure how well it'll work, and it would depend if Carol can get to Poe before the elders can hold them with vines. Loki paused. I'm sorry, Jack, but by the time we figured out what was going on with Marcia, the seed ship had penetrated her suit. If we had jumped her, she still would have died. Damn, I thought, that's a shitty way to go. I waited for Jack to say something, but he was silent. There were tears sliding slowly down his cheeks, which I could barely see in the dim light. Look, I said, I know you're hurting, and there's all sorts of stuff that's running through your head right now. But there's a young kid who's got the world on their shoulders that needs you to get your shit together tomorrow for a few hours at least, so that they know they have more than just me watching their back. They seem to think of you as family, even though they haven't known you all that long. Be good for you to honor that, considering all that they've been through before you even got here. I paused, steeling myself for what I was going to say next. And it's not Loki's fault that Marcia died. It's not your fault either. She made a choice, Jack. Are you going to honor that choice, or are you just going to sit here and be angry about it? Jack didn't answer me, but his glare at me told me that he was at least thinking about what I had just said. I stood up. We're leaving at 0900. I turned and walked out of his quarters. The running lights came on to lead me back to my own quarters. Thank you, Loki said in my head. I did my best. It's up to him now, I replied. I know, he said. But you seem to have got him thinking again, and he apologized to me. Good. I sighed and my stomach growled. When I got to my quarters, Loki had already printed me a pizza and a milkshake. Loki, you're awesome. Thanks. Flowers and smiley face erupted on the wall of my quarters. I laughed, then went to work on the pizza. Chapter 42. Poe. Race ya! I shouted as I started running down the hall. Run! I commanded my suit, and I relaxed my body and let the suit use my body to run even faster. I always liked being in the suit, since it felt wonderful to let my body go. I rounded the corner and raced up the wall. I could see Carol right behind me with a huge smile on her face. I laughed and commanded the suit to go faster. Aw, come on now, said Carol, who had just cut up to me. When we rounded the next corner, I could see Jack and the Admiral waiting in front of the common area. Oh, shit, Carol said. I commanded my suit to slow down, only running a couple of meters before stopping. Carol had to go around the corner and come back before she was able to come to a stop. I laughed as she came back to where we were all standing. I don't think "oh shit" is a slow down command, Carol. Maybe I should change that, she said. I don't really mean that, Loki. I'm just being sarcastic. She smiled, but damn, this suit is awesome. I'm glad you like it, Carol, said Loki. I've added a nutrition drink dispenser and a recycler to your suit, so you won't have to worry about eating. It only has melted vanilla and chocolate, unfortunately, but it should be enough to get by. I made sure it was dark chocolate and that neither of them are excessively sweet. Thanks, Loki. I appreciate this. Sergeant turned towards me. You ready, kid? I nodded and looked at Jack and the Admiral. Carol nodded towards the Admiral, and they moved away from me and Jack, talking quietly. Jack looked at me and then ran his hands through his hair. Listen, Poe. He paused. I'm sorry for not talking to you the last couple days. I get it. Marcia was your partner and all that, I said. Yeah, she was, but I shouldn't have just shut you out after that first night. Our trip here was difficult, and there's a lot you don't know. He gestured vaguely, looking away uncomfortably. Jack, you don't have to tell me what happened. I was just worried about you. I know we haven't known each other long, but you're the closest thing I've had to a father since my daddy Shen died. Really, I just wanted to make sure you're okay, I said. I don't want to lose you either. Jack's eyes welled up. Same here, Poe. Be careful over there, okay? I will, Jack. I think they know that what they did was wrong. I have a feeling they won't try to hurt me. He stared at me for a long moment, but instead of saying anything, he just hugged me. I hugged him back, trying to will some reassurance into the embrace. I pulled away from him and said, I think it's time, right, Loki? Yes, Poe. Carol, are you also ready? Yep, she said. Helmet, I said. Carol activated hers as well. I'm feeding the coordinates to your jump drive, Carol. Please hold on to Poe for the jump. Carol grabbed my arm, and the ship disappeared. Poe, can you hear me? Said Carol in the darkness. Yeah, I can hear you fine. There was a dull green pulsing in the floor, which was the only light in the darkness. There were shadows everywhere. I took a breath, cued on the microphone, and said both verbally and mentally, Hello, elders? The green light grew stronger, lighting up the room. The floor looked like large brown tree roots, and when I looked up, I saw leaves coming from the ceiling of several different types. I heard Carol gasp behind me. Oh my God, they're trees? I think so, I replied. Welcome, friend Poe, said a familiar voice in front of me. I looked towards the voice. Lazarus was standing in front of a large trunk-like column. Lazarus! I stepped forward. He held up his hand. I stopped. It's good to see you, Poe. The others will manifest in a moment. They are not as used to this as I am, even though they've done it before. I nodded. You're talking to them? Said Carol on a suit-to-suit channel. Yes, it's just Lazarus right now. We're waiting for the others. What do you see? Carol was quiet for a moment. I can barely see 7 tree trunks that go from floor to ceiling, with leaves coming from the ceiling. One of them seemed to light up a little more strongly as you stepped towards it. I'm not hearing or seeing anything else. Well, it seems the enhancements are working then, I said. Seems so. No dead people for me, thankfully. I am recording, by the way, even though it'll be pretty one-sided. Good idea. I'll try and say what they're talking about if possible. Carol just nodded in response. Slowly, other forms seemed to take shape in front of each tree. Next to Lazarus was a blue-skinned man, dressed in nothing but a sheer white robe. On the other side of the blue man was another man with dark skin and long dark hair, dressed in an opaque tan robe and sandals. In front of the larger central tree was a black-skinned woman whose hair was leaves, her ethereal dress blended into the floor. On the other side of her was the cloaked woman I saw on the tram when Mama J's spirit left. Next to her was the little girl who had apologized to me in the dream. The last tree was still dark, with no form in front of it. "Welcome, Poe," said the woman at the central tree. "You may call me Black Mother, or the Mother. I am the leader of the elders, I think you would say. You can take your face coverings off, as we have adjusted the atmosphere in the ship to be suitable for humans." I looked at Lazarus, who nodded. "Helmet off," I commanded. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of green and growing things. It reminded me of the arboretum where I had met Lazarus, but even more so. "Poe, what the fuck are you doing?" Carol said. They said the air is suitable for us. We have to start trusting them somewhere." "I would think they owe you more of a show of trust, Poe, than you owe them." I took another deep breath. "We're getting to that." I walked directly up to the Black Mother and stared at her. "Why? Why did you kill so many of my people? Why did you kill my family?" I demanded. "Poe," began Lazarus, but the Black Mother held up her hand. "The human child has a right to know," she said. She stepped forward in front of me and said, "I will show you what the humans did that made us angry and made us kill, if you wish to see it." "I do," I said. The mother held up her hand to my face, which felt like leaves. "Poe, there's a vine coming towards you." "Don't do anything, Carol," I commanded. "They're going to show me what happened on their planet." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes," I said, as the ship disappeared. The sun was shining brightly. A light breeze made their branches sway back and forth. It pleased them to be growing. They were barely awake, but there was good water in the soil and plenty of light for food. They were young and happy, wondering why the adults had asked them all to sleep. There was knowledge seeping through their roots of other places, other suns, other soil, and strange beings. They soaked up the knowledge like they soaked up water. Then there was a strange sound from the sky, like a violent wind from a storm, but louder. They and their other siblings near them came awake. The ones that were closer to the noise saw a black angular thing fall from the sky. It wasn't like when the journeyers came back in their seed ships. It was made of metal, and it made strange noises. The black thing came down and landed in a meadow near one of the rivers. It didn't sink like the seed ship, so they knew it wasn't a seed, but they didn't know what it was. The roots didn't tell them. It made weird hissing noises, but didn't do anything else for a planet turn. After the darkness, when the sun came up again, a panel on the black thing opened. Beings came out. It reminded them of something in their roots from the last journeyer, but the data hadn't finished coming to them yet, since his soil was far away from theirs. The beings set up things to cover them during the darkness when they would become quiet. They made sounds to each other during the daylight. They put smaller metal things in the soil, which made noises that seemed to make them happy. After a few more planet turns, they brought out a larger, noisier metal tool. They walked among the children and touched their skins. Then the being with the noisy metal tool turned it on and put it against one of the children. "Pain! Stop! Stop! Stop!" They tried to talk to them. They tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. After the third child fell, they all sent their roots after them. The beings tried to use the noisy tool on the roots, but they took the tool from them and crushed it. The beings ran back into their metal box and tried to leave, but they sent the roots to encase the box in a seed ship, extract its data, and bring it back to the space from where it came. The being stopped making noises in the box as it was sent away. The seed brought the box to the edge of their planets and left it there. They were angry. All of them were so angry. They learned from the data that these beings had big metal cylinders near their system. There were more than one of them, but they knew which one the original beings came from, so they went to that cylinder first and took revenge for their murdered children. Then the last journeyer sent data seeds to all of them, and they realized that these beings were called humans, and that only a small percentage of these beings could understand them at all. So they sent 2 more seed ships to investigate, with each of the continents sending seed parts so that they could study these humans. They couldn't communicate with any of the humans on the cylinders, so they left the vines with a message asking the humans to stay away from their planet. Then the human named Marcia communicated with them and explained their terrible mistake. All of them were horrified, all except for the traditionalist, whose soil and children had been harmed by the humans who had landed. They would not relent and broke away from us to enact their own revenge. The Black Mother's hand moved away from my face, and I could feel tears running down my cheeks. "We're both to blame," I said. "I'm sorry we harmed your children, but you have killed so many more." "That is our great shame. We do not know how we can mend this." "You can start by removing the vines from the station. That was my home, and I was the only human to survive." "Yes, we will do so, but one of us has a request, and we will honor whatever you decide." The last dark tree lit up, and a form began to coalesce in front of it. Leaves rustled and formed into a human female-looking shape, but around it was a dark cloud. Over the leaf shape, I saw another form take shape. I gasped in surprise. It was Marcia. "What the fuck?" whispered Carol. I stared at her, completely shocked and not sure what to do. The leaf form stayed by the tree, but her spirit shape came over to stand by me. "Hello, Poe," she said. "Marcia, why are you here?" "I have been honored by the elders for my sacrifice. They have merged myself with the traditionalist. We have become something other, so that they will not harm humans again. But there's a lot of me still there. It is the traditionalist's punishment for his actions, and a way for me to be a liaison and teacher for the elders." "Oh," I said, awed. "The elders and I have a request." "What is it?" I asked. "We would like to make a small section of Kahlo Station into a room where we could communicate with you and the others. We will remove all of the other vines from the station so humans can live there again. It would be easier for you to conduct negotiations with us there rather than on one of our ships. We cannot sustain a proper environment for you on this ship for long periods of time, and the elders do not wish to have humans on their planet." "I can understand that. I need to ask Frida first, though," I replied. Marcia looked at the Black Mother. It was a long moment before Marcia said, "We understand and agree. We do not have any barriers to your technology, so you're free to contact Frida." "Suit, connect to Loki," I said. After a moment it trilled. Loki? Yes, Poe. Is there something wrong? No, Loki. Can you put me through to Frida, please? You can listen in. Connecting. Poe, you're all right, said Frida. Yes, I promise to talk to you more later, but I need to ask you about something right now. I explained to her about the elders and their request. What do you think? Will this room affect any humans who decide to live on the station? No, Marcia said. The decoherence effect will only occur in the room. It can be anywhere in the station she deems acceptable. It should probably be away from the most habited areas. I repeated this to Frida. There was a long moment of silence. Then Frida said, Yes, I will agree to this. They can use one of the unused maintenance bays near where you once lived, Poe. I breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, Frida. I'll be over later to say hello. I look forward to it, Poe, she said, and my suit trilled again as the connections closed. The elders closed their eyes, and the spirit forms disappeared. The leaf form of Marcia smiled, then it too melded into the ship. The lights in the ship began to grow dark, so I commanded my helmet back on. I guess we're dismissed? Asked Carol, calling in her own helmet. I think so. Let's go back to Loki. Sure, she said, as she took hold of my arm and jumped us back. Chapter 43. Poe. The next day, Loki jumped all of us to Frida's bridge. I had never been on her bridge before. It was the only part of the station that Frida had never allowed me into. It looked a lot like Loki's bridge, but bigger, with a larger view screen. The screen was showing the seed ship and Loki, with a split to show the outside of the station and the retreating vines. I hadn't been gone long, but it already felt odd being back on the station. It was still home, but so many bad things had happened here. The station did feel different, though, and there were no ghosts on the bridge. I took a deep breath. Hello, Frida, I said. Oh, Poe, I've missed you. It's so wonderful to have you back, she said. I missed you too, Frida. I turned to the others. Welcome to Kahlo Station. Jack smiled, and Carol and the Admiral gave their greetings to Frida. I turned back to the screen, ignoring their conversation with Frida, and watched the vines retreating from the outside of the station. I could feel tears on my face as the vines converged on a small section of Frida's hull. Suddenly, I just wanted to be anywhere but on the bridge. It's all over now, but everyone is still dead except me, I thought to myself. I'm not special. I just did what I had to do to survive. I didn't really think about it. I just ran out of the room. Poe! I heard someone yell behind me, but I ignored them and just ran through the familiar corridors. The bridge was on the same level as the abandoned Mercado. I ran through the empty halls and the dusty marketplace and into the Arboretum. It was somewhat overgrown because the bots could only do so much of the real gardening, but I didn't care. I plowed through the overgrowth to my hidden spot in the trees. I came out on the grassy side a little scratched up, but I didn't care. The grassy spot still looked as it did when I first met Lazarus. I slid a little down the slope, then just sat down watching the stars. It was so quiet and peaceful, I could almost pretend that the last nearly 2.5 years never happened. There were no noises of people coming and going. There was no horchata stand to get a drink. Everyone was really gone. I put my head on my knees and tears just came. I heard footsteps shuffling on the grass behind me. I felt more than saw someone sit down next to me. I'm sorry that I couldn't convince them sooner to leave your people alone, Poe, Lazarus said. There were 3 stations full of humans slaughtered because the 3 of your children were cut down. Thousands of humans, my whole family. I know, Poe. We are long-lived and our children take a long time to mature. They are part of the whole, and killing one is like you cutting off a finger or a toe or even an arm. He paused. That doesn't excuse what we did to you and your people. and we will be forever paying that debt. I nodded. I didn't say anything to that. What was there to say? We sat together for a while, then another set of footsteps rustled through the grass, and someone settled on my other side. Being a priest can really suck sometimes. Believe me, I know. I looked up to see Marcia sitting beside me. She gave me a sad smile. I tried to hug her like I did Lazarus, but my hand went through her. You can't manifest like him? She shook her head. I wish I could, but no. He's more powerful than me. I'm afraid the traditionalist doesn't really have the practice yet. Maybe someday. Why did you let them kill you? You could have picketed out of his ship. No, Poe. The traditionalist took off my helmet right after he immobilized me with his vines. They normally have much higher oxygen levels in their ships to compensate for the lack of sunlight in space. From what I understand, their cells are different from the plants that are in the Arboretum, and they have other biological methods to make food for themselves. Unfortunately, those methods are toxic for humans. I would have died regardless. I stared at the stars for a few moments. I miss you, Marcia, I said. I'm not really gone, Poe. Like I said when you were on the ship, I'll be the liaison between the Elders and humans. It'll be me you'll talk to in the negotiation room or any time you come to the Elders' room here on the station. You'll need to come to the Elders' room soon, Poe, said Lazarus. There are some things we need to do that can only be done there. Oh, what if I don't want to do this anymore? I asked. We trust you, Lazarus said. We do not trust the others. It will be a while, Poe, Marcia said. There is no one else right now, but you won't be the only one for too long. There will be those who will feel called, who will make their way here, and they will help you. We'll make sure you're not alone for too long. How will you do that? I asked. Come to the Elders' room and find out, said Lazarus, who then disappeared. But, I started to say. Don't worry, Poe, Marcia said, standing up. I won't be leaving you alone either. You are always welcome to talk to me. It'll be easier in the room. You'll see. She paused. You can tell Jack about me, or not. It's up to you. I'd like to see him again, if you think he'll be okay with it. I'd understand if he didn't, though. I've failed him again, and this time for good. That's 4 times too many. I nodded. I'll tell him. He should know. She smiled at me. Very good, priest, she said, and disappeared as well. I left the Arboretum and went to the nearest tram stop. Frida? Poe, are you all right? I heard you talking to Lazarus again, so I left you alone. I told the others that you needed time to yourself. Thanks, Frida. Are they mad at me? No, not at all. I think they realize that this is hard for you. Carol said to tell you that she'll be around if you want to talk. The Admiral would like to start negotiations, but is willing to wait another day or two if necessary. Where's Jack? He went back to Loki to wait. Tell them all I'm sorry I ran out, and we can start the day after tomorrow. I think I need to... I need a day, I sighed. Not sure what I was even trying to say. There was a pause. All right, Poe. I'll let them know. Thanks. Can you take me to my family's old quarters? Are you sure, Poe? Yes. The tram pulled up to the station and I got on. The rooms had been cleaned. All the remnants of what had happened had been cleaned. The damage repaired by the bots. The furniture and other belongings had long since been recycled. There's nothing now except a table and chairs in the kitchen area. My old room was completely empty. All the rooms were, even the studio where the grotesque sculpture had been. The marks in the walls of Daddy Shun's room were gone, too. It felt kind of strange that there wasn't really anything left of the family that had been here. "Hello, Peanut," said a voice as I started for the door. I turned to see Daddy Shen standing in the empty living room. "Hey, Daddy," I said. "What are you doing here?" "I was hoping you'd come back and say goodbye. The others have moved on, but I waited." He looked at me. "You've grown up so much, and now you have so much on your shoulders. I wish I could be there to help you." "You could stay. I was seeing ghosts long before the elders came." He shook his head. "It's time for me to go. Remember me?" I nodded. "Of course, Daddy. Always." He smiled. A bright light filled the room behind him, and he turned to walk towards it. I could see other human shapes in the light, and a sense of peace filled me. He turned a bit and waved, then walked into the light. I had tears in my eyes, but that sense of peace told me that things were going to be okay. I took a deep breath and left the rooms for the last time. The door closed behind me silently. Frida hadn't changed my old room in the maintenance bay at all. I spent the night there after going back to my family's old quarters. Even though I hadn't been gone that long, everything seemed so different now. I knew it wouldn't be practical for me to stay in the maintenance bay, especially once people started coming to live here again. But for one night, it would do. I looked around at everything. The weapons on the wall, Joe and Bob, the nest of blankets and pillows, the table and chair, and all my books and papers. Took off my clothes, took a shower, and put on pajamas. I snuggled into my nest. "Frida, after tonight, can I have quarters near the Arboretum?" "Of course, Poe. You are going to stay here with me?" I could hear the hopefulness in her voice, and it made me smile. "Yes, Frida." "Oh, I'm so glad." There was a pause. "I know this is a lot to ask of you, but would you be my captain?" I opened my mouth in surprise, then shut it again. "Are you sure? Aren't I too young? I couldn't take the enhancements either, since I have to work with the elders." "I know. It is tradition that captains take enhancements, but it is not required. There are ways to work around the advantages that the enhancements usually give. But, Poe, you're the only person I can trust to be my captain right now. You are like my own child, because I took care of you, and no whole human knows me like you do." My emotions went through shock, honor, pride, and joy that Frida considered me her child. I really didn't know if I wanted to be a captain. I hadn't been around people for so long that I didn't know how I was going to react to the station's new residents. All I really knew was how to be a priest and how to kill people. But Frida was right. There was no one else, at least for right now. "There will be representatives from each station coming, and Marcia said there would be others called to come here," I thought. "And if the negotiations go well, there will be a need for more administrators." I had an idea. "All right, Frida, I'll be your captain for now, while things are still new and people are still coming here. But I want you to promise me that when we find someone who would be a better administrator than me, someone you feel you can trust, you can ask them to become captain. I can do this for a while, but I'm a better priest than I am an administrator, I think. Right now there's a need for both, but later it'll need to be separate jobs." There was a long pause. "I would wish it differently, but I think I understand. I promise that when another person comes along who can be captain, that I will offer it to them." "Don't worry, Frida. I'll help you find the right person. I wouldn't let just anyone be my mom's captain." Rainbows and flowers glowed from the tablet next to the nest, and I smiled. "I love you, Poe," she said. "I love you too, Frida," I replied, and settled in to sleep in my nest just one more time. Chapter 44. Poe. "Poe, Carol would like to visit with you," said Frida, as I was unpacking my stuff in the captain's quarters. Sure, Frida, tell her to come on in. A few minutes later, the door opened and Carol came in. Wow, Poe, nice digs. Thanks. Although, I don't know exactly what to do with all this space. The only thing in here was the table. I can help you with furnishings, Poe. The bots will be bringing some of the furniture you need later this afternoon, said Frida. Oh, good. I was worried where I was going to sleep, I said. I don't think Frida will let you sleep on the floor, right? Carol teased. I laughed. I slept in a nest of cushions and blankets for 2 years. I did offer to make you a bed, Poe, said Frida, sounding offended. I know, Frida Mom, but the blankets felt safer. Flowers and rainbows danced on a panel on a wall in the kitchen area. I smiled. Carol looked amused. Does she always do that? I nodded. When she's happy or wanting to cheer me up. Maybe it's in the programming? Loki's fond of flowers and smiley faces. Carol laughed. Oh, I've noticed. I've seen them once already. I motioned to the table and we sat down. So, what brings you up here? I asked. The older woman frowned. I wanted to talk to you about Jack. Are you going to tell him about Marcia? I want to, but I don't know how to tell him. I mean, I suppose it doesn't matter, but I don't know how he's going to react. Besides, I'll have to be there with him to talk for her. Carol nodded. That'll be awkward. You'll probably learn more than you want to. But you told me you were a priest, and that priests keep things to themselves. Yeah, that's true. I won't tell anyone what's said. It's just that I'll know. That's one of the things that suck when you get older. You find out a lot of things that you wish you didn't know. What really sucks for you is that you learned that earlier than most kids. Yeah. I remember not knowing what I wanted to do with my life right before the seed ship came. Now I had something to do that I hadn't expected. I sighed. Sometimes I miss being a mediocre potter's apprentice. Listen, Carol said, I think you need to tell him soon. He's drifting right now, and I think he can at least get some closure by being able to talk to her. It'll be hard for him, but I think it'll be good in the long run. Okay. I thought for a moment, then asked, Can I ask you a favor as a captain? Sure, she said. If I can do it, I will. Can you go with him when he goes to get the other delegates from the stations? I don't think, as he is right now, he'll be able to handle dealing with lots of other people. It was only him, Marcia, and Loki for months before they got here. I know he's been with lots of people before, but he's sad, and he's Loki's captain, and Marcia just died. I don't think he should be alone. Why me? Well, you're a soldier, and you know the Consortium better than he does. I can't go with him because I'm needed here, and I don't know anything about politics either. I'll be learning from Frida and the Admiral while you're gone, but he'll have no one if you don't go with him. Besides, Loki's always been more of a god to all of us, and he never really got fully involved with the stations. Literally, we've always called him Loki the Savior. I don't think he knows about Consortium politics either. And besides, you have enhancements close to what Jack has. No one else understands that. Carol stared at me for a long time. You trust me with him? You barely know me. Yeah, but you took enhancements for me and went with me onto an alien ship to protect me. I know you felt it was your duty, but it was way more than you really had to do, and I'll never forget that. I'll be fine here while you're gone, and it's Jack who needs someone to watch his back now. I tried to find the right words. Also, I think it's hard for him to be around me because Marcia was my mentor, and there's a lot of things that I do that's like what she used to do. You three really bonded, huh? She asked. I nodded. I don't know why, but we did. It was almost like they were another set of parents. I mean, it was only a couple of months, but... Carol shook her head. It happens like that sometimes. She looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, Okay, I'll see what I can do. It depends on Admiral Dean, though, since he's my commanding officer. He'll probably agree for the reasons you just gave me. He's not stupid. And listen, if he does let me go, you'll need to know this. Admiral Dean isn't a bad guy, and if you give him well-thought-out reasons for what you do, he'll be reasonable, even if he objects. Always be respectful of him, but if you know you're right, stand your ground. He'll respect you for that. He really was the best admiral to send here. None of the others would be as open-minded as he is. He'll screw things up sometimes, but he'll always apologize when he's wrong. And he does back people when they're right. Thanks for the advice. I'm kind of nervous about this whole captain thing. I know Frida has faith in me, but probably all the people that are coming will be older than me. You are young, but you're smart and you've been through some shit. While you have the job, someone will always be pissed off at you for something they think you've done wrong. It'll be hard, but Frida's got your back. I think after the Admiral gets to know you better, he'll have your back too. The soldier flashed me a wicked smile. Plus, you're the only person who can talk to the elders. If they piss you off, then there's no negotiations. Remind them of that. She smiled. You'll make mistakes, but I know you'll do what's right. I smiled back. You're not wrong. I was one of Frida's old captain's assistants for a couple of weeks before the seat ship came. I had a theory that they used kids as secretaries to keep the adults from being too cranky when they came for their appointments. Adults were always mad at the counselors for something or other. You should see some of the folks that come to the Admiral. Although, he's mastered the look, so he just stares them down until they realize they're being assholes. Even Admiral Gendron isn't immune to that one. We laughed. I'll have to ask him about it then, I said. Thanks, Carol. Anytime, Poe, I mean that. She stood up, saluted me, and left. I suppose I'll have to get used to the saluting thing too, huh, Frida? You will, although only from the folks from Aerie Station, really. Although what you saw when you were Letty's assistant will be helpful. That seems like so long ago. Longer than a couple of years ago. I understand that, Poe. It feels like a completely different time for me, too. I sighed. Frida, can you send a message to Jack and ask him to come over here so we can talk? Sent. Are you going to bring him to the elders' room? I nodded. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Have him meet me there when he's ready, I said, and left my quarters. There was a deep smell of plants and water when I walked into what used to be a maintenance bay. There were 3 trunks coming out from the wall, connected to the floor by roots, and 3 different types of leaves hanging from the ceiling. The leaves moved as if a breeze filtered through the room, but the air was humid. There was enough room for a table and some chairs near the door. Frida, we should have the bots bring in a table and some chairs later on so that people can sit while they're in here. I will print them now, Frida said. Wait to bring them in until after Jack is done. Understood. I approached the roots of the trunks. Something in me said I should take off my shoes, so I took them off and went back to put them near the door. I came back to the roots, and some of them had moved, creating a bench that was wide and smooth. I carefully climbed up to the bench and sat down. I could feel something when my skin touched the roots, almost like static electricity. It gave me goosebumps. Welcome, Poe, said Lazarus. What do you think? I'm not sure. It's warmer than the Arboretum. Feels more like the hydroponic gardens. Yes, our world is more like your hydroponic gardens than the Arboretum. I would ask that your friend Frida increase the oxygen levels in this room. The lights you have in here cannot completely fulfill our needs. The maximum safe levels for humans should be sufficient most of the time, although higher levels of oxygen for at least a couple of your hours every day would be helpful. The leaves rustled in front of another of the trunks, then formed into the figure of Marcia, like it did on the seed ship. Her spirit form didn't manifest visibly this time, but I heard her voice when she said, 25% oxygen is good while humans are in here, but there needs to be at least 2 hours a day of pure oxygen for the elders to maintain function. I repeated this to Frida. Humans require sleep for at least 8 hours a day. We could close this room during evening hours and increase the oxygen then, maybe from midnight to 8 in the morning, Frida suggested. Marcia nodded. That would work. They like that, I said to Frida. Then I will set that atmospheric schedule. I will also need to have the doors resealed to accommodate. I should be able to sort that out before this evening. Thanks, Frida, I said. Let me know when Jack's on board. I will, she replied. Lazarus stepped forward. We have some unfinished business, you and I. His spirit form wavered and became Papa Legba. I told you I'd have something for you when you met with the seed ship, didn't I? Oh, right, you did, but I thought... He smiled and shook his head. There was one part of your initiation that Marcia couldn't do for you. A branch came down from the leaves, and at the end of the branch were small dark purple globes of some sort of fruit. They looked like grapes, but rounder. These here are muscadine. I give them to all my people, and you'll give them to those who come to you to learn how to talk to us. It'll help you communicate with us better. Go on now, take one. Marcia nodded. I had one too, when I was initiated. I didn't have any real ones on Loki, so I couldn't give you one then. I reached up and pulled off one of the purple globes. I put the whole thing in my mouth. Muscadine was sweet, a little tart, and very juicy. As I swallowed it, I felt a tingling sensation in my body, and suddenly I could feel every root and leaf in the room. I knew instinctively that the lights weren't quite bright enough and that the oxygen levels weren't high enough for being in space. It felt as if there was one large entity, or several entities maybe, in the room with me all at once. I could see the human ghosts gathered in the room, but none of them came up to me. Will the ghosts come after me again? I said, as I remembered how they had responded before I left the station. No, Poe, said Papa Legba gently. They will not leave this room, so you'll be able to rest peacefully in your quarters. I sighed with relief. There will come a time when you will bring people here to talk with the dead, but for now, it will only be negotiations. I nodded and just sat on the bench, feeling the presence of all the spirits in the room. It wasn't as overwhelming as it used to be, but it was still a lot. Breathe, Poe, said Marcia, whose leaf form came to stand by the bench. He's coming. The doors opened and Jack walked in. He saw me first and said, Hi, Poe. Why did you want to meet me? He stopped, staring at the leaf Marcia. I'm sorry I didn't warn you, Jack, but I thought that if I did, you wouldn't come. She asked to see you when we were on the seed ship, I said. Frida, can you give us privacy, please? Yes, Poe, Frida responded, and her presence left the room. The doors closed behind Jack. Will you speak for me, Poe? Marcia asked. I nodded. Jack, I'm going to speak for Marcia now, okay? He nodded and came forward to the edge of the roots. Why are you here? How? He asked. The elders have honored me by taking my spirit into them. I've merged with the one who wanted to kill more humans, and that part of the personality is now mostly planet-bound. They were shocked that a human would sacrifice themselves to prevent others of their race from dying. I repeated Marcia's words faithfully, just a moment after she finished. But damn it, Marcia, you didn't have to, he said angrily. She shook her head. No, I didn't have to, but I needed to, or else there would have been war. There was no other way to distract the traditionalists so that Loki could send them back to their homeworld. She stepped forward, away from the trunks, and moved to stand in front of Jack. I stood up and followed, standing slightly apart from them. There were tears flowing down Jack's cheeks. I knew what I was walking into, Jack. I'm sorry I failed you, but I finally found some peace here. She put her leaf hand to his cheek, and his eyes widened. What happened in that moment, I didn't know, but something passed between them. I'll always be here, Jack, she said, then stepped back from him. Her leaf form seemed to melt back into the roots and leaves. Papa Legba nodded and disappeared, but instead of the room emptying, another spirit, this time in the form of a tall man with blue eyes and blonde hair, appeared. I had no idea who he was. Jack? Do you know a tall man with blue eyes and blonde hair? What? He asked. Another spirit came just now. He's staring at you if he knows you. Does he have a tattoo on his right arm? Jack asked. The spirit nodded and rolled up his sleeve. Yes, I said. Some sort of flowing design? Fuck me, Jack whispered as he fell to his knees. Hans. Hans? I queried. Yes, the spirit said. Tell him I'm sorry and that I did love him, but I wasn't strong enough to stay. Tell him to take what Loki's offering. It'll be hard, but he'll be happy. Hans stared at Jack while I repeated his words, his eyes sad. Jack didn't say anything, but just nodded. The spirit left silently. Finally, it was just me and Jack. I sat next to him, not sure what exactly to do. Jack? Hans was my lover during the failed colonization mission I was on. He killed himself shortly after I was sent to the station where I met Marcia. He wiped his eyes on his sleeves, but didn't say anything more. Sorry, Jack, I said, not really knowing anything else to say. Why do the people I care about always go away? Hans died, Marcia died, Mark. Why? He looked at me as if I might possibly have an answer to that. I didn't, so I didn't say anything. He turned away after a few moments, staring at the trees in the room. He got the look like he had when he was talking to Loki. What's Loki offering you? I asked quietly. He's already offered it to me, to become his husband officially. He loves me and I love him, but I'm not sure what other people would think of me marrying him. Does it being official really matter for us? Tell him it's not really meant for him. It's meant to show everyone else the commitment you have for each other, Marcia said in my head. It will help smooth over the politics because they'll know that Jack is committed and won't leave. I smiled. But the wedding isn't really for the two of you. Not really. You know you love each other. It's to show other people the commitment you have to each other, I said out loud. He nodded. Well, I suppose if the spirits are blessing it. He gave a small smile and took my hand. Thanks, he said. I nodded. Think about it and talk to Loki about getting married while you go and get the other delegates. I'll learn about how to do the ceremony, okay? He paused, talking to Loki, then nodded. We will. I'll see you later, he said, standing up. He walked slowly out of the room. I stared after him for a long time before I went back to my still unfamiliar quarters. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revginapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.